Hey everyone, hope you're doing okay and welcome to the Unforeseen Journey podcast. Today I'm going to talk about change and more specifically my own experiences of making changes in my life, the reasons why I believe some of the things I've tried to change haven't worked, and the N equals one of my experiences over the past few years and arriving at a place now where I feel able to speak with some degree of clarity about these things and to maybe help you if you are struggling to make changes um, that stick long term. But I wanted to share with you, I had some resistance about showing up on here today. I'm trying to work through that. I think it's because I've reached a point in these episodes now where I've kind of covered the bases of the last few years for me. And I don't just want to keep going over the same old thing of what I've experienced, etc., but I still feel obligated to show up here. And I know that reflexively, I've got to honor that which I've started. And talking about this whole idea of change today, me showing up and doing this now, in spite of not feeling entirely certain about where this is going to go, feels almost like, ironically, the best example of how you can stick to a change long term, and that is to truly create awareness around the voices in the head which are always going to arise, which are going to try and pull you back to the previous state. And I think energetically we go through times where those voices are strong and those voices are really quiet. For me at the moment, I think they're strong because over the next month I've got a lot of uncertainty and I've got my surgery and moving house, and so energetically I can feel like that is where my mind is at the moment. And because of that, I think there's that part of me that's almost like giving myself permission to go, well, just forget that for a bit. That's not a priority for you. And that's the reason I've got to do this today, to demonstrate that truly change is about understanding at all times the reason why you want to do something. It's about gaining perspective on the voices that will continue to arise in your head that will tell you not to do something. And most importantly, it's holding on to this really powerful vision or mission about what you want to achieve and why you're doing it. So there we go. The lessons become clear, even in me just talking about this for a few minutes. So I'm glad I'm here to be able to talk about this a bit more today. So I live in the world of personal development as a coach, self-development, self-improvement, whatever you want to call it. And inherently, that's fundamentally a process of wanting to, in some way, change. And I think it's worth me sharing with you my experiences of it, of what I've found in that time, especially in terms of personal development and self-development and the minefield that it is, and how we can apply some principles to change that carry through into helping you navigate this bumpy road. So I think the first place I would start, as I want a discussion with this with you, the individual I kind of have to visualize as I have this discussion, is when you're thinking about this thing or these things you want to change, you've got to really first ask yourself, and this sounds cliched, is that really what you want? Truly, is this thing that you say you want what you want? Or is it in fact what you think other people think you should want to do? And I think this is common because we can get sucked into this idea of like, we feel obligated to grow and change through life based on what other people's perceptions of us are. And if we're not demonstrating to them that we are changing or growing, then somehow we are less than. And so it feels kind of like weird to maybe start with this thing of saying maybe you don't need to change, maybe you know that's not what you want. But really, that's the truth of it. If the thing you're trying to change inherently isn't something you really want to do, then it's a really almost that arrogant and presumptive thing you're actually just to believe that you're actually going to be able to do it in the first place. So ask yourself, is this thing you want really what you want? And if it isn't, then let go of it. And then you've got to maybe ask yourself, where's that come from and what's the underlying thing of that? Yeah. Secondly, consider the intention, right? Intention is so big for me. And I think to want to pursue change in life is an essential and a beautiful part of what we can be. And I think we're designed to grow and evolve. It's inherent in, evolution, isn't it? We're just growing and growing and growing. So I think we're kind of born to grow. And I think the greatest thing we can do in our lives is continue to grow. And if you look at what happens when people don't grow in life, especially, people in their later years, they can become really stagnant in their beliefs, in their ways of living, etc., etc. And that scares me. And so I think being in a constant state of growth and evolution and change with a clear defined purpose is a key thing for me at this point in life. I never want to kind of feel like I'm stagnating. And I also want to embrace the discomfort of what change is, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I think, change is part of who we are. And so to want to do it is fine, but it's making sure that, going back to the first question, the change you want to work towards aligns with who you are inside. And is the change you make kind of attached to this clear, visceral, powerful vision of what you want to achieve? And what I mean by that is, it's really easy to think that if you think of this change being this thing, generally we'll talk about like a financial number. If you want to earn X, Y, and Z, which is fine, what's the reason behind that? What's the intention behind that? Is that a way to grow your own belief in who you are in terms of status? Or is it to provide genuine utility and experience that enhances your life? Because I think if you're going at this from a wrong angle, a misaligned intention, again, is something to question. That's not, I guess maybe that does sound judgy, but whatever you want to achieve in this life, I think you've got to do it for you, and also consider, are you doing it for the right reasons? And those reasons, I would say, would generally come from a place of not pushing your ego or identity, but to enhance those parts of your life which are important to you. And that's not to say like there's anything wrong with you want the finer things in life. I think that's great, and no judgment. But I think it's when we get attached to these ideas of change to somehow increase our own self-worth, whereas self-worth is not gained from anything outside of us. Self-worth is gained from within. So again, the change you want to make, especially if it's something in the outside world, if that's connected to this false illusion of the idea that will bring you an increase in self-worth, I need to tell you, it probably won't. Next thing, the uncomfortable truth is that change is hard. We are maybe designed to grow and evolve, but we're also designed to run on autopilot. 70% of our daily actions and behaviors, at least, are automated. We're driving with cruise control on most of the time through life. So whenever you want to change anything in life, you have to accept, you've got to pay the price of admission and understand that is going to be hard. And so therefore you've got to stack up, the argument, the first few questions. This is really what I want. The intention behind this is good. You can see that this ties into this powerful, visceral, emotional vision of where you want to be. Okay, I've got all that there. Let's push into this now and embrace the fact that it's going to be tough. And so, yeah, change is always going to be tough. We live in, undoubtedly, a society of convenience, don't we? Where everyone is really mollycoddled, and we're not used to suffering. We're not used to challenge. We're not used to that. And I think this is why, for me, it sounds weird, I always pull this back to movement, is that that's why I love the idea of like physical challenges, because they help you embrace the discomfort of change, of growth. And I think if you can get your head around that in a physical realm, you can learn to have the same conversations when you're going through anything else in terms of change in your life, or anything else in terms of challenge, because you can see the voices coming, which is something I find commonly if I'm doing like it sounds weird to pull this back to like a workout, but you have the voices and they come up and they're like, just stop, just do this is too hard, yada yada yada. And I think there's so much mental fortitude to be gained from physical challenges that carry over to your ability to affect any kind of change in life. For what it's worth, I share that with you now as a big noticing for me. So as I continue this, the inevitable next part of this, if we acknowledge that change is hard, I've done a couple of posts on this recently, and this is more, this is a reflection of my own experience, but also as a coach, something you come up against is recognizing that for me in my life, many times I have felt the desire to change, but negated or refused to push into the discomfort that is essential or necessary to make that change happen, because the reasons for me making the change weren't quite there yet, in terms of the fact that where I was currently in the current situation weren't quite severe enough so that I had to embrace that pain of changing. And that's an unfortunate thing. And I think I speak to a lot of coaches, and as a coach, I think inherently have a deep desire to help and to want to help people overcome these things and to get through the other side and be that which they're capable of. And one of the big obstacles is helping people push through the discomfort of change prior to being faced with a situation where they simply have to change, because if they don't change, the pain of staying there where they are is so significant now that they've got no choice. It is what it is. And so I just want to urge you to really start to consider that, to really think if I don't take this action now on this thing that I want to change, what are the consequences if I leave this 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? And I think for most of us in terms of personal development, we're looking at improving our health, our fitness, our relationships, our careers. And if we get that feeling that the change needs to happen, then that's the time to honor that. But for some reason, we put many of these things on the back burner until we think, you know what, that isn't something I want to commit to right now. And truth be told, I think we're just shying away from it because we're afraid to embrace the pain of change. And so we sit with the ambivalence, we sit with giving ourselves permission not to do it. And I think that's a sad thing, because we're all capable of achieving so much more if we can embrace the fact that truly fulfillment lies the other side of embracing exposure to pain, and pain that is purposeful, because it's the pain of change. And really is something that's hit home for me in the last year is that I'm arrived at a place truly where I'm starting to feel so comfortable in who I am, so much more fulfilled. I've still got demons, I've still got battles every day, but I've arrived at this place through a significant amount of pain. And that's the unfortunate thing. I've arrived here, but it's taken a lot of pain. And I guess as I try and put these thoughts together in this for you at the moment, I want to urge you to push through into that pain without having to get to where I got to, where I had to change. And I think that's the thing. It's like the pain is almost like increased because of that. I think you can minimize it if you take that conscious decision now to push forward into it. And so when we talk about changes, I think it's important to have a discussion about beliefs too, because I think any kind of change is going to push back against some kind of belief you may be holding on to. And if you don't address that belief as in tandem with addressing the change you want to make, then you're going to kind of get pulled back into that belief. Because I think beliefs are like the rules of our operating system. And as we go through life, we accumulate these beliefs, largely not based on any kind of truth, but just things that happen along the way, and we filter those events into beliefs, and those beliefs become labels, and those labels become convenient, and those convenient labels kind of define us, and then they choose to tell us who we are and what we're capable of. And so with any change, you've got to look at the label you've probably got to remove or address to make that change effective. And what I mean by that is that if you can't change that belief, then the change will only ever be like, you only ever fight against the wind, right? You're fighting against the stream of the river. And unless you can change the flow of the river and honor a different belief, then you're always going to be fighting an incredible amount of resistance with that change. And this is the big one, right? This is the big one to start unpacking with yourself, this belief. Because really, if you ask the question, like, what is this thing I want to change? And what is the belief I'm holding on to that is connected to me not being able to make that change? And then you've got to start asking yourself, where does that belief come from? Do I know this belief to be true? Honestly, do you know it to be true? And like, ask that objectively, as if you're from outside in, because these beliefs are never based on truth. They're based on experiences that are probably selectively pulled from our memory, and they just reinforce the argument we're trying to make at that time, especially if we don't want to make the changes, which is like, well, I can't do that. I'm not capable of doing it. But I need to tell you that those things are like, they're distortions. They're not truth. And I wouldn't be doing what I was doing if I didn't believe that every day you wake up and you have another opportunity to become that which you truly are. And even more so for me now in my life, as I feel like I'm finally kind of at that place, like the resistance that I have to speaking and being, and the emotion I feel, highs and lows, feel just amazing. I believe we can all get to this place. And so I guess I want that for you too. So yeah, if you want to make a change, you've got to change your beliefs. And that belief is the thing to unpack. And without getting into being beyond my lane of like working through trauma and things like that, which are, the things of therapists and stuff like that, what I found, my own noticing, my own observations are that the beliefs I was holding on to existed in a place in my past that no longer served me to be attached to anymore. Like, it was convenient, I think, for me to live many of my years being held under these beliefs about not being good enough, being a bit weird and awkward. And I am weird and I am awkward, but that's absolutely fine. But I think you've got to kind of look at where those things come from. And I guarantee they'll probably come back to something really insignificant when you're a kid, and something may have happened, someone said something, and before you know it, that thing is become a belief that you've carried through into your life. So I can't begin to know your experiences, but for me at least, I know there was a time prior to these beliefs, and through maybe meditation, being able to think more clearly, I've been able to get back to that time. And that getting back to that time has enabled me to see that these beliefs are not permanent. These are things that I've pulled into my identity at certain points in life based on experience, and those beliefs in that moment have compounded and been reinforced through a selective way of looking at the world. And now I've arrived at a place and gone, well, where does that come from? It doesn't serve me. And I think if you can truly move beyond those beliefs, the capacity for you to change and make change long term is just massive. And I did a post on this yesterday, and it's something, a real lesson for me recently. And I share a lot of this because I'm still figuring out for myself, is that saying you're going to do it doesn't mean anything, right? Saying you're going to do something doesn't mean anything, although for some people it kind of negates their responsibility to actually do it, because, well, I'm saying I'm going to do it on Monday. Right? And then we start to do, and whatever we start to do becomes a real conscious effort that requires a lot of energy, a lot of willpower. But in that doing, our belief hasn't changed. We're still attached to the belief that we're holding on to. And the thing we're trying to do, we're kind of fighting against that stream of the river. All right. So you can use this for anything you want to do, but I guarantee that whatever you're trying to change, the thing underneath that is changing the belief. And if you can change that belief, you become that person. And it's not saying you weren't great before. You're fucking awesome, right? You are, if you're listening to this anyway, so thank you. But it's like, it's not beating yourself up from where you were. It's understanding that these things happen to all of us. But as soon as you can change that belief, it's not still going to be easy, but the desire to push through the discomfort of change is so much higher, because you can see that it's connected to this truth about who you are and who you want to become, maybe. And so I don't want to go on too long on this one today, because I think I want to keep this condensed into giving you stuff to think about what is the change I want to make? Is this really what I want? Is this pushing me towards growth? What is the belief underneath this change? And is this leading me towards becoming this future version, fully realized version of you that feels great? And I think you've got to ask all those questions of yourself and unpack those things, and then purely embrace the discomfort of change and keep pushing into it relentlessly. And the thing I've felt in my life, I experienced many times, is I will apply my willpower to something for a finite amount of time, and then the chaos of life will take place. And because, I think we've only got so much energy to push into these different resources, when my energy needs to go somewhere else, this thing gets neglected. And so you have to begin again. And here's where I think the thing about belief comes in, is that when this thing becomes part of you, who you are, energetically, it's so much more easy to apply yourself to, because it's you, who you are. So like training and exercise for me will always be a non-negotiable in my life, because they are attached to now who I am. And I actually think meditation for me recently has become another thing that is now a belief of who I am. And the biggest thing I'm working on now, to be honest, is living truly in a state of feeling worthy and abundance, and not feeling like I am less than worthy and living in scarcity. And that's the big shift, and I'm starting to feel it. But the noticing for me, which is why I wanted to jump on this today, is that I realized that I was saying those things to myself. I was doing the practices to feel more abundant, to feel more worthy. But the shift can only truly take place when that doing goes into believing, like, fucking hell, I am worthy. I'm pretty fucking okay. All right. I'm doing all right. I've let go of any of this idea of what I think other people think of me. And I know that I'm worthy because I come from a place of really wanting to help and contribute in whatever way I can in this life. And abundance is a hard one. Still, I'm going in this transitional phase in my life, going from post-divorce, closing a business to beginning again. And so logistically, there are numerical issues or financial issues that arise that put me in a place that I don't feel financially abundant in the way I want to be able to breathe and just kind of not worry about things. But I do appreciate that my overfixation on that won't really solve it. And in many other ways in my life, I am living in absolute abundance in the fact that I have the time to be able to do this, that I have the time to think and write and read, and the time to spend with my daughter, and the time to work out. And so if I measure abundance in that, then I feel way more wealthy than many people I know. And so, I believe that. And I think the other stuff will come because I'm still starting again at this, right? I'm still finding my way. I'm at the end of this longer term journey over the last few years and stepping into really being the coach that I know I am and I'm born to be. So I've gone on a bit of a tangent there. And I want to wrap this one up today. And I just want to encourage you to think about that which you want to do, to really work through these questions today that we've talked about. And with whatever you're doing, it's got to mean something to you truly inside, right? It can't just be this thing you feel like you should do. Like, it's got to drive something in your soul. And it's got to be kind of unattainable too. Like, don't make it too easy. Change has got to be kind of scary. In truth, I think it's got to be a bit daunting. It's got to be a little bit like, oof, that's a bit of a lofty one to push towards. I think the greater the challenge, the less your resistance to it. It's weird. It's like the easier it is, the more the resistance, because you're kind of like, so whatever the changes you want to make in your life, keep pushing towards them. I completely believe in you. I believe in all of us that we're capable of doing this. If we simply embrace the fact that change is hard, it does take repeated attempts of beginning again, but through every cycle of beginning again, if we don't get attached to the idea of success or failure in terms of a positive or negative, and we simply choose to learn from those failures, then we can continue to push through. And every iteration of that starting again leads us ultimately to a place of never having to begin again with these things. But we've got to push through each one of those. We've got to embrace failure. We've got to embrace the pain, and we've got to keep going. All right. So just keep fucking going. I certainly am. And it feels good. It feels good. I'm going to leave it there today because I wanted to get out what I got out. I don't want to waffle on. And yeah, if you want to have a chat with me at any point, let me know. I am, big for me to talk about this as well. I'm embarking on a journey in June to work with a couple of guys called Chet and Matt and start their Impact Accelerator course, which is going to really help me in terms of upgrading my coaching, upgrading that which I do, gaining clarity around all these different things which I've accumulated over the years into a way that kind of makes more sense. I think that's one of the things I've shared with you is that I've struggled to ask for help over the years, which is ironic as a coach. I've had great coaches, I've got mentors, but I've never really had anyone sit down with me and go, like, who are you? What are your skills? What do you need? What do you need to feel fulfilled? And so I'm going to embark on this journey starting in June for 3 months. I think it's like 5-6 hours of calls a week, homework. And I think in terms of coaching, I will probably close off any coaching inquiries at the end of May, simply as I push head along into this few months of deep work. So if working with me is something you want to talk about now, drop me a message. Otherwise, it might have to wait till the end of the summer, where I feel I might have the energy to take on more new clients, because I'm getting quite busy at the moment. Yeah, it's actually got really busy, which is cool. Have a great week. I hope the weather is good for you wherever you are. I hope you manage to get out in the sun. I hope you make the time to smile and laugh. Connect with those who matter in your life. Love people. Tell people you love them. Hug them. And just have a great time, all right? Take care.